Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to show you how to plant up a bank or sloped ground so it looks good and prevents it from being washed away. Let's get to it. Here's where I'll be planting today. I want to establish some plants here to stop the soil from being eroded. The plant's roots will help bind the soil together and prevent the rain or the stream washing it away. I also want to bring some life back to this area, as apart from a couple of ferns, this area is looking pretty empty. First, you're going to need to choose the right plants for your location. Here, this sloped ground is the bank of this stream, so I need to consider that the stream will be higher and lower at different times of the year. Also, you can see that there are quite a few trees here, so I'm going to need to choose a plant that thrives in the shade. Here, I've chosen Celandine to plant, as it's a nice native species that will thrive in these growing conditions. It's also low-lying, so it won't get washed away by the stream, and it spreads really quickly, so will soon cover the bank. Another plant that works well on a bank would be this vinca, as it's low-lying and evergreen, so will protect the soil from being eroded all year round. It also sends runners, so spreads quite quickly and will soon become established and cover the bank. Celandine grows from these tubers, which are found underground. But the way it spreads so readily is it starts to grow these tubers once it's finished flowering on its stems. So when the foliage dies down, you can see these will end up on the floor and become new celandine plants, and year after year that will happen, so you can clearly see how quickly it multiplies, which will make it perfect for planting on this bank. When you get them, something I like to do is split them and lay them out. Then it's easy handling and you get an equal proportion every time you plant. Before you do plant, make sure that your plants are moist. So after you've bought them, just sit them in a bucket of water so they can revive and be ready for planting. So the way I'm going to be planting today is using a method called slot planting, as this disturbs the soil the least. As you can see, there's already a root system here from the trees, so I want to disturb that as little as possible. I'm going to get myself a trowel, drive it into the soil there, opening it up, creating a slot. Then that slot is wide enough for this celandine to go in. And you just push the slot back together, and that is one celandine planted. You just create a slot, wiggle it open there, get your celandine, poke it in the slot and close the slot shut. And it's as simple as that. A very good method, as none of the soil is washing or falling down back into the stream or falling down the bank if you've just got a slope or a bank. It's all being retained, and you're just inserting new plants which will then spread, and their root system will help hold the bank. Now, I'm not doing any sort of pattern or planting scheme, just a more natural, randomised look, but still filling in as much of the space as possible. Another benefit of using this method is it's rather quick, so it doesn't take you long to really create some impact. You can also see why that bunching method works quite well, just to prepare all of your plants ready before you plant. Bunch them together in a little bundle, so then it's ready to be slot planted. Now, once you've done that, I wouldn't water it. The problem with watering something like this is you're just going to cause disturbance here and a higher volume than water than usual across here, which can cause you to wash away that valuable topsoil. So, let nature do its job. If you have rather tough soil, which is hard to get through with just a simple trowel, you can invest yourself in one of these, which is a lot more stronger and better at cutting through the soil. And that's then planted. As you can see, I've left a space all along the top as I want to establish a different plant along there, potentially a shrub, something a little bit bigger to hide that wall. I've also left a gap here. You can see where I've probably done a lot of my standing. I'm going to put a fern there, as we've got one there and one there, to make it a nice trio. So I've left that space for that. Here's some celandine that I planted the other week, and you can see how it's quickly recovered and perked up. So in no time at all, this will form a mat across the bank and hold the soil together. However, celandine is a spring plant, so the foliage will die down in the summer months. You've got to remember that the roots and the tubers are still within the ground, which will help protect it. That's why it's a good idea to plant different varieties of plants to help protect the soil and prevent it from being eroded. I also planted wild garlic along here, which is one of my favourites. Not only does it look luscious and green and have beautiful white flowers, but it's edible, so it makes it dual purpose for me. And once again, it's another native species that spreads quickly. That's all well and good, but what if you need to plant something bigger than these small celandine tubers? I'll show you that now. Here, I want to plant a fern, and the root ball on this is quite large considering I want to disturb the soil as little as possible. So what I'm going to do is position a log here and hold it up using some stakes in the ground. Then I'll be able to plant behind there without the soil crumbling and falling down. So I haven't got anything special, just an old log. As you can see, it's already been sat on the soil for a bit. I'm just going to position it there. Firmly press it in the ground, and you can already see that I could bring the soil level up to there, which allows the fern to be watered, preventing the water to spill out everywhere. It also catches soil that may fall from further up here down to here, which will also feed the fern. Right, now I'm happy with that. I'm going to drive some stakes in there to prevent it from falling down. What I didn't mention is this piece is already flat there, which is a bit of an advantage in this scenario. So if you're able to with an axe, just take a slither off, it'll help it sit there a bit better. Once again, nothing special, just an old twig. That's driven in nicely, it's nice and firm there. Same again on the other side, it's always worth just to cut an angle, helps it go in the ground better. You already see that's super solid. I'll just put one more in the middle. And as you can see, they're not straight pegs or anything. So my plan is to just do them in at an angle rather than trying to hit them like that. it just won't work. So if I hit them in there, he says, so if I just hit them in there, that's not going anywhere. Then I want to position my fern. So I'm happy with that. And now I know where my hole's going to be. Same again, I'm using a trowel to cut the soil. I wouldn't recommend a fork as that crumbles the soil and we want to disturb it as little as possible. Now I'm happy with my soil depth. I'll bring the fern in. Make sure that it sits there nicely. And it does. So I've got this soil I can use to backfill. As you can see, nothing is coming out. That log is tall enough, that's something to consider. Depending on the gradient of your slope, you may need a higher log. Or if you've got a shallower gradient, then you can have a smaller log. I like using logs as it's something that's natural, doesn't look out of place, and insects and all sorts of invertebrates can live in there. A benefit of planting a fern by a log is the fern can actually root inside the log as the log breaks down over time. So that will just firm it in the ground that little bit more. Now I'm more than able to water that fern now if I wanted to. I would advise to water it lightly to prevent it from filling up and spilling out the side. But this soil is extremely wet, and that's why I'm just going to use the fork just to create some holes there to allow water to infiltrate. And that's it. This fern's going to be very happy there. Here's a fern that I did a few years ago, and you can see that this log has now become part of the bank. And if I prise that away, the fern's root system will be embedded with this log. I think it's a really nice, cheap, natural system of retaining soil and planting on sloped ground. With these two methods, the slot planting and the log retainer, really does open up the opportunities to what plants you can use to retain the soil on your slope. That's it for this video. Hope you found it useful and entertaining. If you did, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Anyone who does so really does help the channel grow, and it's much appreciated. If you're interested in gardening content, do check out my channel. I have lots of other videos on there. I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.